Welcome back to Far From Perfect, everyone. So excited because Allie Damron is back, and it's always a great conversation with Allie. You guys know Allie. She's my podcast bestie, and I'm going to call her my business bestie too. So we're in the trenches together, Allie.
Every day.
You guys, you need someone who helps you feel less alone. If you don't have that, I hope that you find that. And what I love about Allie right now, I mean, there's so many things, but I really like the shift that you're making in your messaging. Everyone knows you as a hormone expert, and you are that. I mean, if you guys were not at the Far From Perfect Summit, I wish you could have seen Allie in action because Allie got drilled with all the questions. Like you had a wonderful presentation, and then as soon as you opened it up for question, it was like this hand went up, this hand went up, this hand went up, and you were able to address all of them. And I'm just sharing this, you guys, because in this sea of information, in the sea of social media where, you don't really know who knows what, Allie knows her stuff. So thanks for being here, Allie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
But you've switched a little bit. I mean, I can still come to you for my hormones, but you've
Absolutely.
noticed that the root of a lot of the hormone issues is our central nervous system, right?
Yes, absolutely. So a little bit of a backstory. So I had in acupuncture school, ironically, I had chronic back pain and it started there and I was 25 years old and it was fairly debilitating. I was a runner, marathon runner at the time. I was a personal trainer also. I liked to be active and all that stuff. And it was really life altering for me to have that every single day. And I tried obviously acupuncture, cupping, PT, chiropractic, I did injections, I did massage, I did everything that you can think of. And a few things would help, a few steps forward, I was kind of back in the same place. And I was just like, as the years went on and months went on, it became more and more concerning because I was so young and I was like, God, this is like really, I don't want to live like this forever. And I started to notice after 5 years, you start to notice some patterns of like, it's okay. It's a little bit better. It's really bad right now. And I noticed that, I was living in Arizona at the time. I noticed that when I went to like home or on like my honeymoon, that the pain would go away. And then it would come right back immediately upon like landing on a plane. And I was like, gosh, it's just like these airplane seats. And, I would look for like the reasons. And one night I was talking to my husband about it and just like, geez, this lasted 5 years and it's really impacted us and all these things. And he Googled stress and back pain. And over the years, I certainly had people be like, your muscles are really tight. I think you're really stressed. And I was stressed. I was in the season of like getting engaged, dealing with family drama, getting my master's degree, working at 5 a.m. as a trainer. And I've said this numerous times, I by nature am a type A perfectionistic type of person. And that was probably at the stage of my worst because you're at the stage where like you're putting pressure on yourself to do all these things and feeling like you're behind and feeling like, what are you going to do with your life and all that stuff. And so he Googled it and there was a book that came up called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And we got it and I read it in one night and I saw myself on every single page. It was like, describing what this back pain kind of was. So comes and goes, changes locations a little bit, changes qualities, worse with stress, all the kind of descriptions of the way that it had gone. Tried everything, nothing's worked. And then it also said, certain personality characteristics like people pleaser, people who had gone through some trauma, perfectionist, type A, goodist, people who always need to be like the good people. And those are people who tended to get this severe chronic pain. And so through that book, I actually got a book cure, which we can talk about what that is in a second, but it got way better. And I was like, okay, I'm not broken. I don't have a disc degeneration. I had gotten MRIs, I gotten, leg length discrepancy and weak core and my glutes weren't firing and my psoas was tight and I had disc degeneration and all of these things. And he went through and debunked every single one of those. And he was an orthopedic surgeon. And so he's at the Rusk Institute, and this was like in the 80s and 90s. So this is like old stuff. We've come so far. But he started to notice that, even with his own patients, some people in back pain would get better. Some people wouldn't. Some people would have surgery. Their imaging would look perfect. They'd still be in pain. So then he started to get like people who did not have back pain and look at their backs. And he started to see like, people with no pain also have these structural abnormalities. They just don't have pain. So we don't look and we don't correlate that. And so he started to realize like all of this kind of brain science and neuroscience in its infancy in the 80s and 90s. And since then, It's come so far. He called it tension myositis syndrome, then it was tension myoneural syndrome, and now we just call it neuroplastic pain and symptoms. So basically, what this is neuroplastic symptoms are caused, or they're basically physical or emotional issues that are caused by how the brain processes and reacts to things like stress, fear, habits, rather than disease or injury. So, pain and symptoms are a danger signal. Anxiety is a danger signal. If you sprain your ankle, your brain sends pain signals to your ankle to say, hey, there's tissue damage here. You're at risk for further tissue damage if you continue to walk and run on this ankle. So, we're going to give you some pain, some inflammation, so that you don't do that while this healing process takes place. Now, neuroplastic pain, we would see in somebody who starts to elevate the fear, the preoccupation, and hypervigilance around that symptom. Oh my God, is my ankle going to get better? Is it better today? Is it worse? Starts to light up. 44 different centers in the brain are associated with chronic pain, and they wire. So neurons that fire together wire together. So the more that we are preoccupied and scared to death of a certain symptom, the more that symptom is going to exist because your brain gets the message that it's dangerous. So neuroplastic would mean, in this ankle analogy or example, that the ankle pain that you had from a sprained ankle that should have healed in 1 to 3 or 4 weeks probably persists way longer. We see it in whiplash. We see it in all kinds of anxiety, OCD, depression, overwhelm. We see it in dizziness and vertigo, migraine headaches, heart palpitations, IBS symptoms. We see it, and we can see these things on labs. So it's not like, well, I got my gut health test done and I have, inflammation in there, or I have food sensitivities, or I have gut dysbiosis where the good bacteria are imbalanced to the bad. You can see all this on labs. You can see cortisol levels, you can see inflammatory markers, you can see immune markers. You can absolutely see structural things happen. It still does not mean it's not neuroplastic. And since the 80s that he did this, there's so many studies around this and showing that so much of what we think to be chronic symptoms in a structural way is not a structural problem. It's not caused by disease or injury or long-term things. It's caused from our brain getting confused and sending glitchy messages to give us symptoms.
Whoa, this is crazy. Okay, this is gonna be a stretch, but this is the first thing that came to my mind because of what I do with clients.
Yeah.
If the fear is coming from the fear of weight gain, are we perpetuating gaining weight?
Yes. So it's fear in general that causes a brain to switch. So fear of the symptoms. So initially when I'm working with patients with symptoms, I'm like, okay, there's this thing called the pain fear cycle. So we have to break that. There's two sides of this coin. We have to break the fear of the symptoms. So I would include that with weight gain.
Yeah.
I think that urgency, that fear of it absolutely perpetuates fear in our brain. We can see the amygdala, the limbic system. We can see those things change on a functional MRI, and it will cause your body to go into this fight or flight response, which we know that's not good for weight loss. We know that that holds on to water and puffiness and inflammation and fat. Fat is so protective for us. So when we're in this chronic state of fear, survival mode, your body doesn't want to give up fat.
So, are you helping clients with this right now?
Yeah, I have, like I said, my own back pain, I guess I didn't really finish that story, is completely gone. I never, ever, ever have back pain now. I don't have any fear around it. I deadlift as heavy as I want. I can run. I can do stretches. I can do anything I want. And I'm telling you, I didn't exercise for a long time. I only did like the stair climber because I could go upright. It was bad. It was very debilitating. And I don't ever have it. Now, I've had other symptoms of kind of danger. So I've also had some dizziness and vertigo stuff. I've had anxiety pop up. I've had weird, like even just this week, I had like this weird twitch and I'm like, I know what this is. Like, and it went away. It's fine. But if I would have laser focused on it and been like, oh my God, what is this? What's wrong with this? Is it better or worse than yesterday? What should I do about this? It would surely be there still today.
Yeah. So, let's say I'm having a bout of anxiety because I know when it pipes up, and then there is that rumination that happens when certain things trigger me. What's my course of action? Like, what's my practice that we would go through? What does that look like?
Yeah. So with anxiety and all the symptoms that we've talked about, it's reduction of fear. So I had a patient actually recently that we had a really, really great success story with this. She was going to a therapist. Also, she was never an anxious person, all of a sudden had all this anxiety. She was like, I think it's perimenopause. We start to kind of go through this, and her husband's a news anchor. So he's traveling all the time. She's raising kids, but she's been doing that forever. And she's like, that was never a trigger. She recently moved from different cities and away from her family network. So we know fear, part of our nervous system is safety, is that we need community. We need this safety net of people. And she lost all of that. So I told her, and she and I kind of talked about it. And I was like, I think that's probably why you're having a lot of anxiety, because your brain just knows that there's not the safety net for you right now. So root cause, let's work on building that safety net for you. Let's find people that you could call in the middle of the night, people that you trust, people that you can hang out with. Let's try to find that community. And that, long process, obviously, that's a route. So she's starting to do that, and it's starting to help. But initially, for like the acute anxiety, I think that, again, there's two sides to this. So number one is the thought. You cannot control your thoughts. Your thoughts are going to come in, right? We have catastrophic, all or nothing, disqualifying the positive, all these cognitive distortions, and we can't control that they come and go. But we do get to make the conscious decision of which ones we attach ourselves to. So number one, what I recommend calling it out. Oh, there you are, catastrophizing. You're worried your husband's not going to come home. You're worried this is going to happen. You are catastrophizing. And I actually give the analogy of like a screaming toddler on the floor. So if you have a screaming toddler on the floor that wants a lollipop, after 10 minutes, you're not going to go give them that lollipop, or you're reinforcing the behavior. You're also not going to berate them and be like, God, you're so stupid. Why are you doing this? You are going to simply disengage. Mm-hmm. You are not going to buy into any of it. You're just going to say, okay, you do your thing over there. Not a big deal. You come see me when you're ready. And that's what I recommend doing with the thought piece of anxiety. We don't need to engage with it. The more that we convince ourselves and, okay, this isn't going to happen and this is why, and stop thinking this way, you're engaging with it. You're giving it power.
Yeah.
So we simply call it out and say, okay, you're catastrophizing. This is a fear. This is a worry. Your brain's kind of on this high alert. It's looking around for all these scary things to protect you. I also think that it's important to recognize that it's not your brain working against you. It's your brain trying to protect you.
I love that.
So I think that when you have chronic pain or symptoms or anxiety, it feels so easy to be like, I hate you. And I hate, you have this distrust with your body. It's really important, I think, to understand why it's existing. It's there as a protective mechanism. It's just glitchy. In the form of anxiety, it's just oversensitized. It's going off. The danger signals are going off when maybe something shouldn't be unsafe.
I love this. And I'm actually really proud of myself as you say that, because like intuitively I knew that. I can tell when I'm catastrophizing. So like I'll be totally transparent with everyone. My anxiety, of course, is around business, right? Everyone else is doing better than me. I'm not going to make it much longer. All the things. And I know enough to not engage in that. Like, no, Kylie, I can look at it from that third party or from the bird's eye view. I'm like, Kylie, you're doing that thing. It's fine. That is not true.
And I think that that's like the big thing. It doesn't even matter the content.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Don't even engage in the content. It's nothing to do with the content. It's that thing that we're doing. We're ruminating. We're overthinking. We are trying to read people's minds. We are catastrophizing.
Yes.
And to just stop it, make that conscious decision to stop it right there. The other thing that I recommend doing that is scientifically studied, and this is where we get into the science of things, is to do something that's called somatic tracking. So with the physical sensations, the lightheadedness, the dizziness, which is how mine manifests frequently, the heart palpitations, the weird stomach, the jelly legs, the heat, the flushed sensation, the tremors or shivers, like any of those things that happen when you're anxious, recognize first, okay, this is adrenaline. That's all it is. The sensations of anxiety cannot hurt you. They're uncomfortable, but they are benign and they cannot hurt you. So the more that you actually sit with these sensations, I call both anxiety and pain sensations, not pain or anxiety, because I think it lessens the threat a little. The more that you can sit with these sensations and say, okay, you're here. This is anxiety. This is adrenaline flooding my system. I'm okay. It's just uncomfortable. And you kind of like, I recommend kind of describing it. So, like, okay, interesting. My chest feels really tight right now. It feels like something's squeezing. It feels like a little bit of pressure. And you're just kind of like, with lightness and curiosity, describing the sensation in your body. And when you do that and you're able to go to the source of the sensation, you are teaching that neural pathway in your brain, you are not scared of this. This is not a danger signal for us. You are
Awesome.
being glitchy. We're fine. If you need to be there, let's be there. But the goal in doing this, which is where I coach people through this, is not to get rid of it. If we
Mm,
have this intention of like laser focus, like a hawk, and are like, okay, I'm going to sit with this and I need this to go away right now. And I need to meditate and breathe and journal. You are increasing the danger. So to my patient with anxiety, and again, this is where we are sort of, but anxiety is a nervous system issue. It's not a mental health issue.
mhm.
And so when we treat it from the brain solely and not the physical part of it, people with anxiety are like, okay, it's coming. I need to go get in my safe spot. I need to meditate. I need to get out of here. I need to take my medicine. You are giving it that power still. So anything we do with anxiety, depression, chronic pain, symptoms in general to make them go away teaches your brain they're dangerous still.
Mm,
So we want to sit with it and teach it that it's safe. We are
mhm,
able to handle it. And I know it's hard. It took me, I had a book here with the back pain, it came back.
mhm,
So I felt safe enough in it, like there's nothing broken and wrong with me. The confidence increased, the fear dialed way down when I read that book and understood what was happening to my back. And I was like, cool, I can go run now. There's nothing wrong with me. This is just coming from my brain. I'm fine. I felt great for about a week. It absolutely came back because the source was still there, the pressure, the criticism, the worry, and fear.
mhm.
Those are the three reasons that a lot of neuroplastic symptoms exist, is from those three things.
I'm seeing parallels similar to what we talked about yesterday on your podcast about the heavy weight, being afraid to push hard because we're afraid to feel the thing. You don't want to be afraid of it, go into it. And I'm also thinking for anyone who practices like yin yoga, it's long holds, deep, intense stretching, getting into the fascia, and you have to go into it because if you back off, you're not going to get the benefit. You're not going to move past the thing. It's just, this is such a life lesson for everything.
For everything, right? You think about just the nervous system in general, and you think about all of our coping mechanisms, from food to alcohol to shopping to scrolling our phone. All of it is about avoiding discomfort. So the people with the most regulated nervous systems and the healthiest bodies are the people who are willing and able to tolerate the most discomfort, like point blank. You have to be willing to tolerate discomfort.
And I would also like to point out in this opportune time that tolerating discomfort means not rushing back into fat loss the minute you see the scale go up. Like
That's your
that's what
brain
Allie's
saying,
also
oh my
talking
God, the weight's coming. Oh my gosh. No, we're not going to do that anymore. This is an old pathway. This is an old thought that we learned from diet culture and the scale and our moms and all the things. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to buy into something different. And I think to start this conversation, I should have started it here. To actually heal these symptoms and the nervous system in general, self-compassion has to be there. And there's actually Kristen Neff is as a psychologist and a researcher, and she studied self-compassion. She has a workbook that I recommend and a book. And she said there's actually three components of self-compassion. So I think that a lot of us, when we think of self-compassion, we're like, oh, it's just like being nice to ourselves. And she actually goes into this. And I am wholeheartedly going to throw myself under the bus. I was very resistant to being self-compassionate because I think a lot of us feel like self-compassion is giving ourselves the out, letting ourselves be lazy, unsuccessful, unmotivated, gain weight, not push ourselves in our business. We feel like this masochistic, mean person inside of us is how we've gotten to this point in like the successful ways. But in reality, this criticism, right, is dialing up the fear, dialing up the stress hormones, and it's making it worse. Like even for business, right? If you want to have a successful business, obviously sitting out of fight or flight and getting into your creative mode, your memory, your flow, your emotional regulation, your logical thinking. Those are important places to run a business from. And when you're in survival mode or the threat mode, you're running it from like adrenaline and cortisol, and you make horrible decisions.
Yep.
You store fat. You can't push yourself as hard. You get into burnout and adrenal fatigue. You can't be great in your relationship. You're snappy and irritable with your kids.
Allie's literally describing 2023 for me, you guys.
I have been there too. So, like I said, I started with the back pain thing, but dang it, I have seen all kinds of symptoms since too. And realizing, I know how to get rid of the symptoms for myself now, but it came to a journey or a point in my own journey where I was like just trading symptom for symptom for symptom. And it's called the symptom imperative. So if you don't heal the fear in your brain overall, not just fear of the specific symptom, your brain will find a new one. So you hear people are like, oh my God, I used to have neck pain and that went away. And now I have IBS. And then that went away. And now I have terrible anxiety, or I have dizziness, or I have this weird shoulder pain that's preventing me from working out. You don't have a laundry list of things. Very, very rarely do chronic things are actually structural. In fact, there was a study in 2023 called the Boulder Back Pain Study, and they did it on back pain because back pain is such a common neuroplastic symptom. And there's a doctor, his name's Dr. Schubiner, he's an MD, and there's a psychologist, his name's Dr. Alan Gordon, and he's the founder of the Pain Psychology Center. And they did a study, and they wanted to look at functional MRIs to see what changes in our brain when we heal from chronic pain. And so they took 50 different people, and they were like, they took the doctor to look at all the imaging and all the things to make sure that it was actually neuroplastic. And they assumed they'd probably find a few that had actual structural pain, and they couldn't do the study. They didn't find any. None of them who had chronic pain over 8 years had structural pain. And 96% of them within 4 weeks healed completely.
This is so empowering and promising.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. And I'm really, really passionate about it for so many reasons, but it's estimated 1 in 3 primary care patients have this going on. And we're just being prescribed medication after medication and physical therapy and all of these different things that maybe help. But how many times do you hear your clients even go and try to treat these things? And it's just this uphill battle. It's like, this isn't working. I've been in physical therapy for a year. I still have some, mobility issues. I still have some stiffness or pain. I'm, the opioid crisis, this is amazing for that, surgery, the insurance company, there's so many amazing things about this medicine that we just, if you think about how we run our life with pressure, fear, self-criticism, being on the phone all the time, watching murder mysteries, looking at comparison, looking at the news, there's so much fear in our brain. Right. And most of us are constantly sitting there bracing for the fight. We have our swords up and we're just, we're just in this place where our brain feels like the external world is so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that a lot of just clients, a lot of times just operating from fear, from all of their things that you just mentioned. And it just becomes more clear why it's hard to reach our goals, chronic pain or not.
Right. Totally. When we're operating in a state where the brain is operating on fear and misinformation, that's what we call it. I actually, everyone's talking about nervous system dysregulation, and I say that sometimes, but I, over the course of time, have come to stop saying that as much because I don't think that it's dysregulated. Actually, I actually think that our brain is working flawlessly. There's nothing wrong with how our brain's working. It's working how we want it to. It's working from a place of too much fear.
It's just like metabolism. Your metabolism is not broken.
Right.
It's doing exactly what you trained it to do, just like your brain.
Totally. And I think once you understand this and you're like, oh, it dials down the fear so much and you trust your body so much more and you're not fighting it and you're not like, what's wrong with me? I'm broken. I need to search for the next thing. And I talked about that on Instagram, I think yesterday, this like urgency and searching and fixing and constantly being addicted to changing and helping ourselves is actually like, again, dialing up all the danger signals that we're not okay right now. In
Yes.
fact, part of my own journey with personal development in 2019, 18, 2020, that is where my symptoms came from those years for sure. So I was like, okay, I need to be more motivated. I need to get up at 5 a.m. I need to crush my business and make all these income goals. And there was so much pressure. And I can palpably still feel it
Yep.
when I
I
think about it.
agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I love personal development, but I also have a love-hate relationship with it. It's honestly a different topic for a different podcast, Allie. But like you and I know what really goes on in people's lives. There's only a handful of books that I will actually pick up and read because I don't believe the author is embodying what they're doing. And
Yeah.
you and I can now sniff it out. I have a very interesting conversation. Okay, I know my therapist doesn't listen to this, so I'm going to tell you something. This is so fucking cool. I'm listening to this book that like everyone's like, you gotta read blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay. So I'm starting to read it. And to me, the author is just regurgitating everything else she has read in other books. Red flag from me. I'm not getting the sense that I was like, this is just not landing with me. So I'm talking to my therapist about it. And she's like, oh my gosh, Kylie, when we still had our podcast, we had her on and it was like pulling teeth to get her to say anything. Like you can tell not everyone is
Just no.
she just didn't know, she didn't embody it. She wasn't
Wow.
practicing what she preaches, you know?
I
So
mean, you see that all the time, right? And
mhm,
like, not to toot my own horn by any stretch, but like you said, like if you ask people questions and interview them, we see that in all aspects of life, politics included. Like if you sit down and talk to people in a one-on-one thing, like you get to know who they are
exactly.
versus these like Instagram posts where you can just copy paste or, lives where they have a script behind the computer screen that they're reading.
Exactly.
That's
So
sad.
that is my issue with personal development. And I think maybe, it takes a while to get a nose for some of that. I do want to circle back to what you were talking about earlier about the self-compassion. I'm getting ready for our final call in my community. And one of the things that I was just reminded of was self-compassion isn't just sitting with the good stuff.
Right.
It's acknowledging the icky stuff
Exactly.
also.
And that's what I was going to say about personal development and change. So it's great to grow, right? Like all these crappy thoughts that we have and all these patterns that we have, like absolutely, let's overcome those. Let's grow, let's change. But you have to do it out of a place of self-compassion and love for yourself.
Yes.
I just had this conversation with a patient for weight loss and she was sobbing by the end of our call. And I actually, I don't like to make people cry, but it's good. I was like, let it go. Let's go cry. And she was coming at weight loss from a place of just hatred for herself and, just all the reasons. And I was like, you got to come at it from a place of self-love. Like you can do it. But let's come at it because we love ourselves. We want to put ourselves first. We want to treat our body like a temple and feed it food that works well for it, not because you hate yourself.
Yeah. It won't
And I
work.
think that's true totally for all the different things that we want to change in our life, including like business stuff, right? Coming at it from a place of fear and pressure is like never helpful. So I want to just quickly say for self-compassion, there's actually 3 different components of it that I learned from Kristen Neff. And the first component of self-compassion is mindfulness. So when you put pants on in front of the mirror and they're tight and you're like, oh my God, you're so fat and disgusting and you're such a loser and you're so unmotivated and why are you like this? You need to stop eating all of the things that we say when that happens. What are you trying to avoid? So you're avoiding maybe disappointment, shame, guilt, failure, and those things feel in our body. So one of the reasons for neuroplastic symptoms is a lot of it is repressed emotions. And Dr. Sarno originally talked about repressed anger. And I think women are really great anger avoiders. And so when you think about that, physically feel, what does shame feel like for you? Does it feel tight? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel hollow? Does it feel sinking? Describe to yourself and sit with what you're trying to avoid. It's not about the pants. It's about this feeling that you failed, you have shame, you're angry at yourself, whatever. So you have to acknowledge that first. And that's part of it. Again, the discomfort. Sit with the discomfort, the uncomfortable emotions included. The second part is common humanity. So a lot of times when we have these feelings, we're like, feel isolated. We feel like we're the only ones who feel this way,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The only ones who are going through this. We're the only ones who are failing. We're the only ones who have so much shame. Every single person walking this planet has experienced how you currently feel.
Yeah.
Every single person.
Yes.
May not be the same situation, but we've all these emotions, these feelings are universal for humans. And I think we forget that. And so when there's some common humanity and you're like, yes, I'm feeling shame right now, everybody else has experienced this around me too. It can dial down that fear just a little bit because you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. This is a normal thing. It's just uncomfortable. And then lastly tends to be the thing that we think of. It's kindness. It's saying, okay, pants are tight today. It's okay. Doesn't impact who you are, doesn't impact your worth. What would you say to your daughter, your son, your friend, your spouse, your partner, your mom? What would you say to somebody else in this situation? And it's interesting with like relapse. Some people will get relapses in chronic pain or neuroplastic symptoms. And so there's this like 3-part thing that we say. And I think it goes for this situation too. There's like the panic. Oh my God, it's back. Oh my God, the pants are tight. Oh my God. Then there's the fake it till you make it. So we're going to start the self-compassion and you're going to say these things. You're not going to believe any of them. It's going to feel like you're floundering around out of water, right? Like just really awkward. And then eventually things start to click again. Things click and you're like, okay, we're going to do this. But I think a lot of the cognitive stuff of like self-compassion, changing your thoughts, those types of things, or it's not really changing your thoughts, I guess more disengaging with those types of thoughts that we talked about. It's just practice.
Yes.
It's just over and over and over again, having these corrective experiences where you're like, nope, we used to do this. If masochistic thoughts and self-criticism worked, like we would all be perfect people.
Yes.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
We've already established that. So
Yeah.
let's put down the sword and realize if you get into more rest and digest, your body's not working on stress hormones all day, every day, some magic things might start to happen.
Truly. I mean, you're training your brain. You're training your
Yeah.
brain. You're so concerned with training your body. I talk about this in yoga all the time. I'm like, you guys think you're here to train your bodies. You're not. You're here to train your mind. This is where it's at. Like, Allie, I'm so excited for you and the people that get to work with you. Because this is like life changing.
It really is. And I think, I've obviously evolved a lot and I still do hormone stuff. I still do the supplements. I still do the lab testing. I still enjoy all that stuff very much. But I just have seen a supplement's never going to do this ever. And the reason that hormones are imbalanced is from the things that we're talking about, even in perimenopause, even when we're talking about like, well, this is this normal thing and these hormones are fluctuating, even then, and more so ever than that.
More so as I'm thinking about the perimenopausal experience.
Yeah.
All this fear, all this uncertainty is coming up. You're being bombarded with a bunch of energy. Fast, don't fast. Zone 2, sprints. Like it's too much.
And I think that, I can't take credit for this. Somebody along the community in neuroplastic symptoms talked about this, but it's midlife is the era of responsibility.
Yes.
I feel it deep in my soul right now with all the changes. And I think parenting is harder now
Mhm.
than it was in a different way than when they were littler. And gotta say, it's very unexpected.
Mhm.
I didn't expect that to feel this way. And I love my kids. It's great, but it feels way more high stakes. And I really have to look at the pressure piece of it.
Yeah. It's
I think,
different because you're not just dealing with the toddler kicking and screaming on the floor that wants a lollipop. It's like their future.
big stuff. And it
Big stuff.
feels really high stakes. Again, the societal pressure puts a lot more on us than probably needs to be. But, I think that and finances and mortgages and marriages and aging parents and all the things. It's just a time of a lot of transition, I think, which is transition in general is going to make our brain just feel a little bit more hypervigilant, a little bit
Yeah.
more on edge.
I can't remember who I heard mention this. It might have been Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton. But the other thing is it's this huge era of responsibility, but we're also facing the second half of our life and like, is this what I want my life to look like? It's this time
Yeah.
of reckoning. So not
Yeah.
only is everything transitioning and heavy and you're holding a lot, you're also like, is this how I want my life to be? So then you're looking at, is it a career change? Am I going to get divorced? Am I a lesbian? Like, I wish I could find someone to come on my podcast. If you know anyone as you're listening, I want to talk to someone who has data on women coming out in midlife because it happens all the time. And I
Mhm.
want to talk about it. It's not a mistake. I think we realize that
Yeah. I
we're
think
doing
so
what we're
too.
supposed to do. I don't know. Because just like we can't express our emotions like anger, and I do want to talk about anger a little bit more. I think a lot of women were kind of just groomed unintentionally to follow the path.
Right. I think so too. I hope that we're starting to change that a little bit and understanding that there's some different paths to take and being more accepting of that. But I certainly think for our age, absolutely. And I think, it was no mistake that when I was 25, I got back pain. Like that
When did
was
your
also
father pass away?
at 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was years later. That was in the tank. I was called like a little reservoir. It was certainly in that reservoir and very traumatic. But, just who as I look back and reflect all these years later on that, like there were a lot of things around that of like how I grew up. And, a lot of these neural pathways are from how we grew up. We
Oh,
learn
yeah.
from the ages of 0 to 7 what this world is and how it's safe.
Hmm.
And so we learn to be a perfectionist. We learn to be a people pleaser. We learn to have high achievement. We learn to be type A. We learn to be quiet, not use our voice. Those things all at some point felt safe.
Exactly. And so we don't feel safe to feel angry. And so we don't. And then it bottles up. And like you get to be 42, 43, 45, and you're like, I can't keep this bottled up anymore.
Yeah, you have so much anger inside of you from, getting not validated or not being able to use your voice or not making decisions the way that you wanted to because society said that was not okay. So many things.
I know. I think it helps. I mean, you and I both grew up in the Midwest, and I think that probably comes with its own set of. It's not like I'm sure growing up in the South has one set of expectations. Growing up in the Midwest has another set of expectations.
Yeah.
Can't speak to anywhere else, but there were expectations,
Oh, for sure.
unwritten.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I think back to my own childhood and I had very well-intentioned parents that genuinely wanted the best for me, but I mean, I was definitely groomed to be a mom.
Yeah,
And
right.
I wanted to be. I still love being a mom, but I feel like if I wouldn't have had kids, like that would have been really weird in my family.
Yeah. What if you didn't? What if you didn't get married? I saw something yesterday on Instagram, and it was actually from someone in Denver. He's a black politician. I need to find his name, but he shared a graphic about how the percentage of people who are married now and how it's gone down and all of this stuff. And they was having a conversation about that. And I was like, that's so interesting.
It is interesting. And I think some of the ways that I mother, I can see how my mom influenced that and maybe, some not so great ways like being a martyr. And I've had to like look at that and be like, no, no, you don't have to just like sail yourself down the river and just like, I'll do it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of growth in all of these years for sure of just recognizing, things that I just thought were truths that like you could start to question and be like, I have a partner, like maybe he could take the baby.
Right.
Maybe I don't have to be here 24 hours a day. I didn't really even know that at first.
Yeah. It's just a paradigm shift. It's just a paradigm shift, and it's whatever works for you. I have some acquaintances that I know who motherhood is their jam, and, like,
Yeah.
that's what they wanna do, and they feel kinda guilty sometimes that society doesn't honor what they do, and, like, yeah, that is the most important job, for sure, if you
Yeah.
choose to do that,
Yeah.
but that doesn't have to be my truth or your truth, but
Yeah.
we the point is we all get to choose.
I think we talked about this a little bit on mine yesterday, but I think to your point, everyone can choose a different thing and like a different thing. All of these things are like fairly neutral in nature, and we get to attach the meaning.
Yeah.
So I think it's important at this stage in the game to have some awareness and introspection. Like, what actually does make you happy?
Yes.
There's a woman, her name's Nicole Sachs, and she is also in this neuroplastic community, and she's wonderful. She's a psychologist. She talks about it all the time. She has a new book coming out. She's been in this field for decades, but she talks that she had ankylosing spondylolisthesis, I think, as a kid, and like was supposed to have this big back surgery. And same thing, she found TMS with Dr. Sarno and has no back pain, and so she does it now too. But she talked about how in motherhood she was like, the lingering part of her pain was about, and this is going to sound terrible, and this is part of the problem, that she had like a bunch of anger toward her kids.
Oh, yeah.
I was way too scared to admit that. Like, how could you think this about your kids? And she's a wonderful mother. I know
Yes.
her personally. She's a wonderful person. She parents well. It's not that, but I tell my patients regularly, I'm like, because some of this you can do, like for anger and stuff, you can do some journaling or unsent letters that can help kind of get it up and out. And I warn them, I'm like, this needs to be uncensored. It may be the ugliest, worst thing you've ever experienced in your life or expressed. It is okay.
Yes.
Thoughts don't equal actions. There's a lot of nuance here, but this is living inside of you causing this. So you can either choose to keep it down and not acknowledge it, or get it up and out.
The dark soul of the night. You gotta fall in love with the dark stuff or accept it. Yes. I'm not gonna share my dark thoughts on the podcast, but I
No,
have them, and
I
they
have.
are not good, you guys.
We all have them.
Yes.
The brain is weird, like the subconscious, the dreams, the weird stuff, right? And that's kind of the thing with the thoughts and the fears. We have like 70,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
They're like, some of them are bizarre, hateful, weird, mean, crazy, whatever. And you're like, there's no attachment to those. They're just like in and out, come on by. But until we attach ourselves with some of these thoughts, and then we're like, they get very sticky.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah.
I wanna start a club. It's either high performers turned low performers or good girls gone bad.
Yeah.
We were the ultimate good girls. I know you and I would have been friends in high school, never getting in trouble. That doesn't mean I wasn't doing bad stuff. I just was smart enough to not get caught.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Which again, like part of like the whole pattern of things, like when you learn this and you look back, you're like, that was about that decision. Okay, that was about that decision. Okay, here we are with this one. It's just like, when you understand how the brain works, which has been like my life's journey for the last 12 years.
Mhm.
I've been studying this. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And when you break it down, it honestly is so empowering. Some of the most empowering messages that live repeat in my mind came from you, Allie. Like the one is your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Your body is just responding to the signals that you are sending it. And then whatever you said today that I brought up, I can't remember right off the bat, but yes, this is empowering. This is not disempowering. Like when people tell you to manage your stress and you're like, that makes me more stressed out.
Yeah. And the cool thing about all of this is people talk about, it's due to stress. You can handle the stress.
Yes.
You can handle the stressors. You can work on your symptoms. You can get symptom free despite being in stress. It's just processing it. It's feeling it. It's teaching your brain that despite the stress, you're still safe.
Yes. You are resilient.
Yeah. Yeah. We do it all the time.
So if someone is listening and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I need." Do they get a hold of you for this the same way they would for like a Dutch test?
Yeah. Yeah. So we just do a free 15-minute consult, and we can chat about, what your symptoms are. I had a patient yesterday who's been dealing with long COVID. And interestingly, it's almost been 5 years. Long COVID is absolutely neuroplastic. Think about all the fear around COVID. So we treat that. And there's dozens and dozens of research, and I could go into a whole podcast on long COVID, but we treat it that way. And it's amazing. It works fantastically.
Well, I know a couple people who listen to this podcast regularly that do have long COVID, so let's deal with it.
Yeah. It's just this. It's just your brain getting glitchy messages. There was a lot of fear around the COVID. Is it better? Is it worse? Kind of started happening longer. And there's this saying, I think I said it earlier, that like neurons that fire together wire together. So the more that you focus on this, laser focus, is it better or worse? Scared, fear, hypervigilance, like it keeps it going in your
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah, your thoughts create your reality.
It really is like most chronic symptoms are neuroplastic. Most all. We can get into insomnia, anxiety, OCD, chronic pain, IBS, dizziness, vertigo, migraines, visual stuff,
Yeah.
hormonal stuff. It's all that.
Well, I'd rather it be that than actual, like me having to have back surgery.
Right.
Yeah,
It's way out.
this is good news.
It's great news. It's the best thing of medicine that we've found. It's amazing.
Yes, I mean, truly.
Truly, there's so many people, doctors. There's a medical advisory board at this place called symptomatic.me online. They're wonderful, wonderful doctors just doing the work, not getting paid for surgeries anymore. Not, they're just not doing it because they just know. Psychologists, people like myself, there's a lot of, I've met a lot of physical therapists, including actually Dr. Amy.
Is she doing this work?
She does. I asked her at your retreat and I said, do you know Dr. Sarno? Because she was talking about like emotional stuff. And I was like, have you ever heard of them? And she's like, yeah, I did it for my back pain.
My God.
Yeah. So
Say
there's
no more.
many
My two favorite people are in on this. That's all you need to know.
all in on this.
You guys, that's all you need to know. Literally, I trust you guys. You don't even know how many people I say that you need to contact Allie and you need to contact Dr. Amy.
Yeah.
You are my referral network.
Yeah. I love Dr. Amy too. She's wonderful.
Oh my God. Well, do you guys ever talk about Joe Dispenza at all in your group?
I don't know his work like that well. I do know that it aligns well with this.
Yeah.
There's another woman, her name's Dr. Mary Claire Weeks. She was like in the 80s and she has several books, but one of them's called Hope and Help for Your Nerves.
Okay.
And so she was like well before her time too, but it's still very applicable and wonderful. So some other resources that you can go to just learn this, because I know that it's a big paradigm shift. And so I always on the 15-minute consults tell people before we work together, it'll save you some time and money. Go read a book about it, go listen to a podcast, go watch a YouTube channel so that you understand what's going on. So a couple resources, like I said, Dr. Nicole Sachs is coming out with a book, I think in January, and she's a long podcast. She's wonderful. Alan Gordon has a book called The Way Out, and I give that all the time. It's a really quick read, and it explains it. There's a guy on YouTube who is my favorite. His name is Dan Buglio with Pain Free You. He has a new video on this topic every day.
Every day?
Every day. He's been
Dan.
doing it. He's grown like a weed over the last like 5 years. He just does a new like 8-minute, 10-minute video. He has dansfaststart.com, which teaches you like the first part of the information to get going. There's symptomatic.me, which is, and there's quizzes. So you can take quizzes on all of these websites to see, is this neuroplastic, what I'm dealing with? And you do the quiz for each symptom that you're having. Chances are, if you have multiple symptoms, it's definitely neuroplastic. Most of us don't have systemic things happening unless you have like lupus.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's like I said, like amazing. I know that I get over passionate about it, but it is really incredible and it has absolutely saved my life.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. And it's so great to know that we have other resources out there, other ways to heal ourselves that don't require a prescription.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just like certain strategies that we work through in our sessions. And like I said, it works like a charm.
Awesome.
Nearly always.
So alliedamron.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can go there /consults if you want to schedule an initial 15-minute one, or Instagram. You can just, it's all over there too.
Okay, perfect. Well, Allie, thank you so much for all this amazing information.
Gosh, thank you for allowing me to share it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.